You people always think you can sneak in where you don't belong. Get out of my cabin now. Those were the last words Sheila, the head flight attendant of Horizon Airways, thought she would ever say to the girl in the gray hoodie. She thought she was protecting the prestigious first-class cabin from a stowaway. She thought she had the power. But what Sheila didn't know was that the quiet girl in seat 1A wasn't just a passenger. She was Nia Sterling, and exactly 5 minutes after being dragged off that plane in handcuffs, Nia didn't just file a complaint, she bought the entire airline. This is the story of the most expensive mistake in aviation history. The air inside JFK Terminal 4 was thick with the smell of overpriced coffee and anxiety. It was 8:15 a.m. on a Tuesday, and Flight 808 to London Heathrow was already boarding. Nia Sterling adjusted the hood of her oversized vintage sweatshirt. To the untrained eye, she looked like a college student who had rolled out of bed late for an exam. Her sweatpants were baggy, her sneakers were scuffed, and her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She carried a beaten-up canvas backpack that looked like it had survived a war zone. But appearances are the most dangerous deception of all. The backpack was a limited edition collaboration between a Brooklyn artist and a French fashion house, worth more than most people's cars. The scuffed sneakers were vintage Jordans. And Nia Sterling? She was the 26-year-old genius behind Nexus, a logistics AI software that had just been acquired by Amazon for $4.2 billion. Nia kept her head down. She hated attention. Today was supposed to be a celebration, a quiet trip to London to sign the final papers for her newest venture. She wanted comfort, not recognition. That was why she had booked seat 1A. She approached the gate agent, a tired-looking man named Greg. He scanned her digital boarding pass. The machine beeped green. "First class," Greg said, blinking as he looked at her outfit, then back at the screen. Right this way, Miss Sterling. Enjoy your flight." "Thanks," Nia murmured, walking down the jet bridge. As she stepped onto the plane, the atmosphere shifted. The economy passengers were shuffling to the right, fighting for overhead bin space. To the left was the sanctuary of first class, wide leather seats, champagne on ice, and silence. Standing guard at the entrance to the first-class cabin was Sheila. Sheila had been with Horizon Airways for 20 years. She wore her uniform like armor, pristine, tight, and intimidating. Her blonde hair was sprayed into a helmet of perfection, and her lipstick was a violet shade of red. Sheila prided herself on keeping her cabin exclusive. She had a sixth sense for riffraff. When Nia turned left toward first class, Sheila's arm shot out like a barrier. "Miss," Sheila said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness that barely covered the venom underneath. "Economy is to the right, row 30, and back." Nia paused, looking up from her phone. "I know, I'm in 1A. Sheila let out a sharp, derisive laugh. It was loud enough that the businessman in seat 2B, a man named Mr. Henderson, who was already nursing a scotch, looked up. 1A, Sheila repeated, looking Nia up and down with blatant disgust. "Sweetie, seat 1A costs $12,000. I think you're confused. Let me see your boarding pass." Nia sighed. She dealt with boardroom sharks daily. A flight attendant with a complex didn't scare her. She held up her phone. Sheila snatched the phone from Nia's hand, her long nails clicking against the screen. She stared at the QR code. It clearly read, "Nia Sterling, seat 1A, first class." Sheila frowned. She swiped the screen, trying to find a flaw. She refreshed the app. The ticket remained. "This is a glitch," Sheila announced, handing the phone back as if it were contaminated. "The system has been acting up all morning. You probably bought an economy ticket and photoshopped this, or hacked the app. It happens all the time with your demographic." The cabin went silent. "My demographic?" Nia asked, her voice dropping an octave. "And what demographic is that, Sheila?" She read the name tag on the woman's chest. Troublemakers, Sheila snapped. Now look, I have actual high-paying customers trying to relax. I'm not going to let some hood rats sit next to Platinum members. Go to row 45, or I'm kicking you off. Naya didn't move. She stood her ground, planting her feet firmly on the plush blue carpet. I paid for this seat, Naya said calmly. Scan it again. Call the gate agent. Do your job. I am doing my job, Sheila shouted, losing her composure. My job is to ensure the safety and comfort of the passengers, and you are making everyone uncomfortable. She turned to the cabin, looking for allies. Isn't that right? She doesn't belong here, does she? Mr. Henderson in seat 2B swirled his scotch. He looked at Nia, then back at Sheila. She is blocking the aisle, he grunted. Just get her moving. Sheila smirked triumphantly. See? You're disrupting the flight. I'm giving you one last chance. Move to the back, or I call the air marshal. Call him, Nia challenged. Sheila's face turned a shade of purple. She marched to the intercom phone on the wall, punched a button, and spoke loudly. Captain, we have a security situation in first class. A passenger is refusing to take her assigned seat and is becoming aggressive. Aggressive. The buzzword used to demonize black women for centuries. Nia hadn't raised her voice once. She hadn't cursed. She hadn't moved. Within moments, the pilot, Captain Miller, emerged from the cockpit. He was a tall man who looked exhausted. What's the problem? Miller asked. She's refusing to go to economy. Sheila pointed a manicured finger at Nia. She has a fake ticket, and she's threatening me. Captain Miller looked at Nia. He saw the hoodie, the messy hair, the backpack. Then he looked at Sheila, his senior flight attendant, whom he had flown with for a decade. He didn't check the scanner. He didn't ask to see Nia's phone. He just wanted to take off on time. Ma'am, the captain said to Nia, his voice stern, you need to follow the crew's instructions. If you don't have a first-class ticket... I do have one, Nia interrupted, holding her phone up again. It's fake, Captain, Sheila interjected. I checked it. It's a screenshot. She's trying to scam a free upgrade. The captain sighed, rubbing his temples. Ma'am, I can't have this disruption. If you don't move to economy right now, I will have you removed from the aircraft. This is a federal offense. Nia looked around the cabin. A young woman in seat 3A looked sympathetic, but terrified to speak up. The rest of the passengers were avoiding eye contact or filming with their phones, eager for the drama but unwilling to help. Fine, Nia said, a cold smile playing on her lips. Remove me, but I promise you, Captain, and you, Sheila, this will be the most expensive flight you never took. Is that a threat? Sheila shrieked. She just threatened the aircraft. Get her off, now! The next 10 minutes were a blur of chaos. 2 airport police officers, heavy-set men with grim expressions, boarded the plane. Sheila stood by the galley, arms crossed. A smug look of satisfaction plastered on her face. That's her, Sheila pointed, the one in the hoodie. She's trespassing. Ma'am, grab your bag, Officer Davis said, his hand resting near his belt. Let's go. I want to file a formal complaint, Nia said, swinging her backpack over her shoulder. This woman is discriminating against me based on my appearance. Tell it to the judge, the officer muttered. He grabbed Nia by the upper arm, his grip unnecessarily tight. Nia didn't resist physically. She knew better. She let them guide her out of the first-class cabin. As she passed Sheila, the flight attendant leaned in close. Go back to the bus station, honey, Sheila whispered. Horizon Airways is for elite people, not you. Nia stopped. She looked Sheila dead in the eyes. The air conditioner hummed, but the silence between them was electric. Remember the name Nia Sterling, Nia said softly. Sheila laughed. I'll forget it by the time the wheels go up. Nia was marched past the economy passengers, who craned their necks to see the criminal being escorted off. Mothers pulled their children closer. People whispered. She must have drugs. She was probably drunk. They walked her up the jet bridge, back into the terminal. The humiliation burned, but underneath the embarrassment, a cold, hard rage was solidifying into a plan. As soon as they were back in the terminal, the officers released her arm. You're banned from this flight, Officer Davis said. Go to the customer service desk if you want a refund, but don't cause any more trouble, or you're going to jail. They left her standing there near the gate. Nia took a deep breath. She smoothed her hoodie. She watched through the glass as the jet bridge retracted. Flight 808 began its pushback. Sheila was on that plane, popping champagne, thinking she had won. Nia pulled out her phone. Her hand wasn't shaking. She dialed a number that very few people in the world possessed. It rang twice. "Jonathan," Nia said. On the other end was Jonathan Pierce, the CEO of the private equity firm that owned the majority stake in Horizon Airways. "Nia?" Jonathan sounded surprised. "I thought you were in the air. We have the acquisition meeting in London tomorrow." "I'm not in the air, Jonathan. I'm at JFK. I just got kicked off your plane." "What?" Jonathan's voice spiked. "Why? Who?" "A flight attendant named Sheila. She didn't like my hoodie. She decided I couldn't possibly afford a first-class ticket. She had the police drag me off." "Jesus, Nia. I'm so sorry. I'll get you on the next flight. I'll upgrade you. No." Nia cut him off. Her voice was ice. "I don't want a voucher, Jonathan. I want the airline." "Excuse me?" "Horizon Airways. You've been trying to offload it for months because their stock is tanking and their PR is a nightmare. You offered it to me last week as part of the portfolio, and I said I'd think about it." "Yes, but I'm done thinking. I want to buy it. Now. Send the electronic contracts to my secure server. I'm signing them right here at Gate B12. "Nia, are you serious? That's a $400 million acquisition on a whim." "It's not a whim." Nia watched the plane taxiing toward the runway. "It's a cleanup operation. Send the papers, Jonathan. And then I need you to make a call to the tower. Turn that plane around." There was a long silence on the other end. Then the sound of typing. "Contract sent," Jonathan said. "And I'm calling air traffic control. Welcome aboard, owner." High above the Atlantic coastline, Flight 808 had reached a cruising altitude of 30,000 feet. The seatbelt sign pinged off. The cabin crew unbuckled, smoothing their skirts and preparing the trolleys. Sheila felt a rush of adrenaline. She loved the power of the cabin. It was her domain, her kingdom. She walked down the aisle of first class, holding a bottle of Dom Perignon like a scepter. "More scotch, Mr. Henderson?" she asked, beaming at the businessman in 2B. "Make it a double." Henderson grunted, opening his laptop. "Glad you got rid of that riffraff. I hate delays." "We aim to please," Sheila purred. She poured the drink, feeling vindicated. She convinced herself that she had done everyone a favor. That girl, Nia, was obviously trouble. Probably a scammer, using a stolen credit card. Sheila had seen it all in her 20 years. "You have to trust your gut," she told herself. She moved to seat 1A, the empty seat where Nia had been. It felt like a trophy now, a symbol of order restored. Suddenly, the plane lurched slightly. Not turbulence, a bank. A sharp, aggressive left bank that sent the champagne in Mr. C. Henderson's glass sloshing over the rim. Sheila frowned. They were supposed to be heading east to London. A left bank this sharp meant they were turning around. The intercom crackled. Captain Miller's voice filled the cabin, but it sounded different this time. Tense. Strained. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We have received an urgent directive from Air Traffic Control and Horizon Corporate HQ. We are being ordered to return to JFK immediately." A collective groan erupted from economy. In first class, the wealthy passengers sighed with irritation. "What?" Mr. Henderson snapped. "I have a meeting in the morning. Sheila, what is going on?" "I'm not sure, sir," Sheila stammered. Her stomach gave a weird flutter. "It must be a mechanical issue. Safety first." "Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts," the captain continued. "We will be on the ground in 20 minutes. We are returning to Gate B12. Gate B12, the same gate they had just left. Sheila strapped herself into the jump seat facing the passengers. She caught the eye of the young woman in 3A, the one who had looked sympathetic to Nia earlier. The girl was looking at her phone, then back at Sheila with a strange expression. "Is everything okay?" Sheila asked, her professional mask slipping slightly. "I don't know," the girl said quietly. "My dad works in aviation law. He just texted me. He said the flight trackers show our plane's ownership status just changed in the database. Mid-flight." Sheila laughed nervously. "That's impossible. You can't buy a plane while it's in the air." Apparently, someone bought the whole airline, the girl whispered, looking out the window. Sheila felt a cold prickle of sweat on her neck. The whole airline? She thought back to the girl in the hoodie. The threat Nia had made. This will be the most expensive flight you never took. No, Sheila thought. That's ridiculous. She was a hood rat in dirty sneakers. She probably had $5 in her bank account. But as the plane descended, the atmosphere on board grew heavy. The flight attendants in the back were whispering. The pilots weren't giving updates. It wasn't a mechanical failure. The engines were humming perfectly. They landed with a thud, braking hard. The plane taxied aggressively, moving faster than usual toward the terminal. As they pulled up to gate B12, Sheila saw something that made her blood run cold. Usually, a return to the gate for a mechanical issue means a maintenance crew is waiting. Men in orange vests, ladders, toolboxes. But today, the tarmac was empty of mechanics. Instead, there were 3 black SUVs parked right on the tarmac next to the jet bridge stairs. And standing at the end of the jet bridge, visible through the porthole window of the plane door, was a group of suits. Serious suits. Corporate suits. And standing in front of them was a figure in a gray hoodie. The seatbelt sign turned off. "Sheila!" the captain called from the cockpit, opening the door. He looked pale. "Prepare the door for arrival. Corporate is here." "Corporate?" Sheila asked, her voice trembling. "Why?" "I don't know," Miller snapped. "Just open the damn door." Sheila approached the heavy door. Her hands were shaking. She rotated the handle, pushed it up, and the door swung open. The smell of jet fuel and the humid New York air rushed in. Standing in the threshold was not the gate agent Greg. It was Jonathan Pierce, the CEO of Horizon Airways. Sheila had only seen him once at a company Christmas party. He was a billionaire. He never came to the gates. Behind him was Nia Sterling. Nia hadn't changed. Same hoodie. Same backpack. But her posture was different. She wasn't looking down anymore. She was looking straight at Sheila, and her eyes were like lasers. "Mr. Pierce!" Sheila gasped, smoothing her skirt. "What an honor! We had to return. I assumed it was a mechanical." Jonathan Pierce didn't even look at her. He stepped aside, gesturing for Nia to enter. "After you, Miss Sterling," Jonathan said, his voice deferential. Nia stepped onto the plane. The silence in the first-class cabin was absolute. Mr. Henderson dropped his phone. The young girl in 3A gasped. Sheila stood in the entryway, blocking the aisle purely out of habit. Her brain couldn't process what was happening. "You," Sheila spat out before she could stop herself. "You can't be back here. You were banned. I told you to go to customer service." Nia stopped inches from Sheila's face. "I did go to customer service," Nia said calmly, "but the line was too long, so I called the owner." "The owner?" Sheila blinked. "And I bought the company," Nia finished. What? Sheila's knees buckled slightly. Nia turned to Jonathan. "Jonathan, please clarify the chain of command for your staff." Jonathan Pierce stepped forward, his face grim. He looked at Sheila with disappointment. "Sheila, this is Nia Sterling. As of 12 minutes ago, the paperwork was countersigned. Ms. Sterling is the new majority shareholder and owner of Horizon Airways. She is your boss." The color drained from Sheila's face so fast she looked like a corpse. "No, she's wearing a hoodie. I'm the woman you dragged off the plane," Nia said, her voice projecting through the silent cabin, "because you decided I didn't look like I belonged." Nia walked past Sheila, brushing her shoulder. She walked to seat 1A. She sat down. She buckled the belt. "Now," Nia said, looking around the cabin. "I believe we were going to London." The shock wave that hit the cabin was palpable. Passengers were craning their necks. Phones were out, recording everything. The narrative had flipped so violently that the air felt thin. Sheila was still standing by the door, hyperventilating. Her world was crumbling. The narrative she had built for 20 years, that she was the gatekeeper, the judge of character, had just been shattered by a checkbook. Nia looked at the captain, who was standing in the cockpit doorway looking terrified. "Captain Miller, is it?" Nia asked. "Yes, ma'am," Miller said, his voice cracking. "Are we ready to depart? Again?" "Yes, ma'am. Fuel is fine. We just need to close the doors." "Good," Nia said. Then she turned her head slowly back to Sheila. "Actually, there is one piece of baggage we need to offload first. It's dead weight. Bad for fuel economy." Sheila froze. "Miss Sterling, please. I didn't know. If I had known who you were." "That's the problem, Sheila," Nia interrupted, unbuckling her seatbelt and standing up again. She walked back toward the galley so she could look Sheila in the eye. "You treat people based on who you think they are. If I was wearing a suit or if I was white, you would have served me champagne. But because I looked like this," Nia gestured to her hoodie, "you treated me like a criminal." "I was just following protocol," Sheila cried, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. "I have a perfect record. I've been here 20 years. "And in those 20 years, how many people have you humiliated?" Nia asked softly. "How many people have you made feel small just because you had a badge and a uniform?" Nia pulled out her phone. She tapped the screen and held it up. It was a live video feed from the cabin security cameras, which she now had access to. "I just reviewed the footage of our interaction, Sheila. You called me a hood rat. You profiled me. You escalated a situation that didn't exist." Nia turned to Jonathan Pierce. "Jonathan, does Horizon Airways have a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination?" "We do," Jonathan said, looking at Sheila sternly. "Strictly enforced." "Good," Nia said. She looked at Sheila. "You're fired." The words hung in the air. "You can't," Sheila whispered. "I have a union. I have pension. You can't just fire me on the tarmac." "Actually, she can," Jonathan interjected. "You violated Clause 4.2 of your contract regarding passenger abuse and discriminatory conduct. It's gross misconduct. Immediate termination. No severance. No pension." Sheila looked around for help. She looked at Mr. Henderson. The businessman quickly looked down at his laptop, typing furiously, wanting no part of this. She looked at the other flight attendants. They looked away, terrified for their own jobs. "Get your bag, Sheila," Nia said, pointing to the door. "The police officers who escorted me off are still in the terminal. I'm sure they'd be happy to escort you." Sheila began to sob. It was a messy, loud breakdown. "Please! I have a mortgage! My kids!" "You should have thought about that before you judged me," Nia said, her voice devoid of pity. "You wanted me off this plane so bad? Well, now you're getting your wish. You're leaving. I'm staying." Sheila grabbed her tote bag with trembling hands. She looked at the first-class cabin one last time, the kingdom she had ruled with an iron fist. Now, she was the exile. She walked down the jet bridge, her heels clicking, a sound that used to command respect, now sounding like a retreat. As she stepped out of the plane, Nia nodded to Jonathan. "You can go, Jonathan. I'll see you in London for the board meeting. Make sure a replacement flight attendant is sent down. I don't want this flight delayed any longer." "Already done," Jonathan said. "Jennifer is on her way down from the crew lounge. She's excellent." Jonathan stepped off. The heavy door was pulled shut by the co-pilot. Nia returned to seat 1A. The cabin was dead silent. No one dared to speak. Nia adjusted her backpack under the seat in front of her. She put her headphones on. She closed her eyes. Then she felt a tap on her shoulder. She opened one eye. It was Mr. Henderson from seat 2B, the man who had told the police to just get her moving earlier. He looked terrified. He was holding his glass of scotch with a shaking hand. "Ms. Sterling," he stammered, "I just wanted to say, I didn't realize earlier. I was just tired. I hope there are no hard feelings." Nia looked at him. She looked at his expensive suit, his watch that cost more than a house. "Mr. Henderson," Nia said coolly, "enjoy your flight, but keep your voice down. I'm trying to sleep." Yes, of course," he whispered, shrinking back into his seat. A few minutes later, a new flight attendant, Jennifer, breathless and looking a bit scared, boarded the plane. She did the safety demonstration with military precision. As the plane taxied back to the runway, for real this time, Nia looked out the window. She saw Sheila standing inside the terminal glass, talking to the gate agent, crying. Nia didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She just felt a heavy sense of justice. She pulled out her notebook. She had an airline to restructure. The Atlantic Ocean is vast, dark, and silent. but inside the pressurized tube of Flight 808, the atmosphere was screaming. For the first hour of the flight to London, the first-class cabin was quieter than a library. It was a terrified silence, the kind of silence that happens when a predator is in the room, and everyone is afraid that making a sudden movement will draw its attention. Nia Sterling sat in seat 1A. She had not reclined her seat. She had not ordered a glass of champagne. She had not even taken off her sneakers. Instead, she had her tray table down, her laptop open, and she was typing. The rhythmic clack, clack, clack of her keyboard was the only sound in the front cabin, cutting through the hum of the jet engines like a metronome. To the other passengers, she was a terrifying enigma. An hour ago, she was a hoodrat being dragged off by police. Now she was the owner of the plane they were sitting in. Mr. Henderson, the businessman in seat 2B, was sweating. He had spent the first part of the morning agreeing with Sheila, complaining about riffraff delaying his flight. Now, he was nursing his lukewarm scotch, terrified to make eye contact. He watched Nia from the corner of his eye. Every time she hit the enter key aggressively, he flinched. Was she firing someone else? Was she canceling his return ticket? Was she banning him from the airline? Eventually, Henderson couldn't take the tension. He cleared his throat. It sounded like a gunshot in the quiet cabin. "Miss Sterling?" he whispered, his voice cracking. Nia didn't stop typing. She didn't look up. "Yes, Mr. Henderson?" "I just wanted to apologize," he stammered, swirling his glass nervously. "For earlier. I didn't know who you were. I was just stressed about my meeting. I hope you understand." Nia finally stopped typing. She turned her head slowly. Her expression was unreadable. It wasn't angry, but it wasn't friendly either. It was the look of someone calculating the value of an asset and finding it wanting. "Mr. Henderson," Nia said, her voice calm and smooth. "You didn't apologize because you were wrong. You apologized because I have power. If I were still just a girl in a hoodie without a title, you'd still be rolling your eyes at me." Henderson opened his mouth to argue, but no words came out. He turned beet red. "Drink your scotch," Nia said, turning back to her screen. "And pray that when we land, I don't decide to restructure the loyalty program you're so proud of." Henderson sank into his seat, looking like he wanted to disappear into the upholstery. While the physical cabin was silent, the digital world below them was exploding. 30,000 feet in the air, the onboard Wi-Fi was slow, but it was fast enough for Chloe, the young woman in seat 3A. Chloe was 19, a Gen Z digital native, and she had been recording everything. She hadn't just filmed the confrontation. She had been live streaming on TikTok. She stared at her phone screen, her eyes widening with every refresh. When the plane had taken off, the second time, the video had 5,000 views. By the time they reached cruising altitude, it had 500,000. 2 hours into the flight, it had crossed 12 million views. The video was titled, "Karen Flight Attendant versus Undercover Billionaire. Wait for the end." Chloe watched the comments roll in like a waterfall. It was a tsunami of outrage, shock, and vindication. At user 992, "The way she said I bought the airline made my soul leave my body. Queen." At Fly High, "I've flown Horizon for years. Sheila has always been rude. Karma finally got her address." At Justice Seeker, "Does anyone know the flight attendant's full name? The internet does its thing. 3, 2, 1. And the internet did its thing. Within 3 hours, Twitter ex-detectives had found Sheila. They found her Facebook profile. They found her high school yearbook photo. They found a tweet she had made in 2018 complaining about urban passengers ruining the lounge atmosphere. The hashtag Boycott Horizon began to trend worldwide. But it was quickly overtaken by a new hashtag, Nova Air. Nia had mentioned the name Nova in a press release years ago as a dream project. The internet had dug it up. They weren't just canceling Sheila. They were already celebrating the rebrand before Nia had even signed the official logo paperwork. Chloe looked up from her phone and saw Nia working. She felt a surge of awe. The woman in 1A wasn't checking the comments. She wasn't looking for validation. She was too busy actually doing the work. Chloe caught the eye of Jennifer, the replacement flight attendant who had been rushed onto the plane. Jennifer looked terrified, balancing a tray of hot towels. "Is she okay?" Jennifer whispered to Chloe, nodding toward Nia. "She's not just okay," Chloe whispered back, showing Jennifer the phone screen with 40 million views. "She's the most famous person on the planet right now." Up in the cockpit, the atmosphere was thick with dread. Captain Miller was flying the plane on autopilot, but his hands were gripping the yoke so hard his knuckles were white. Beside him, his first officer, a younger man named David, was staring out the window at the clouds. "Did you know?" David asked quietly. "Know what?" Miller snapped. "That she was, loaded. That she was her. She was wearing a vintage hoodie and sweatpants, David. How was I supposed to know she was the founder of Nexus?" Miller rubbed his temples. "I just wanted to take off on time. Sheila said she was a security threat." "Sheila's scorched us," David muttered. "We look like accomplices." "The company email just pinged. Corporate PR is in meltdown mode. They want a statement from us as soon as we land." Miller groaned. He had been a pilot for 30 years. He had flown through hurricanes, landed with engine failures, and navigated geopolitical airspaces. But he had never been this scared. He had almost arrested his own boss. "I need to say something," Miller said. "I need to get ahead of this before we land." "Say what?" "I don't know. Just something." Miller reached for the PA system handset. His hand hovered over the button. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his voice. Back in the cabin, Nia was sketching. She had pushed her laptop aside and was drawing on a napkin. She was looking at the first-class curtain, the heavy velvet divider that separated the rich from the poor. She hated that curtain. She sketched a new cabin layout, open, airy, no dividers, better legroom for everyone. She wrote down notes, retrain staff on empathy, diversity in hiring, lower prices for last-minute travel. She wasn't just angry. She was inspired. Sheila's prejudice had revealed the rot at the core of the company. It was a culture of exclusion. Nia was going to turn it into a culture of belonging. The intercom crackled to life, interrupting her thoughts. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking from the flight deck." The voice was shaky. It lacked the usual pilot confidence. "We are beginning our initial descent into London Heathrow. The weather in London is, rainy, mild." There was a long pause. The static hummed. "I also want to take a moment to welcome a very special passenger on board. To our new owner, Ms. Sterling, on behalf of the entire flight crew, we want to thank you for flying with us. And to all passengers, we are excited for the bright future of this airline under new leadership." For a second, there was silence. Then, something incredible happened. It started in row 35, a slow clap. Then row 34 joined in. Then row 20. Within seconds, the entire economy cabin was erupting in applause and cheers. They had heard the rumors. They knew the girl in the hoodie had won. They were cheering for the underdog. They were cheering for the idea that money doesn't give you the right to be a bully. The sound of the applause filtered through the curtain into first class. Mr. Henderson looked uncomfortable. Chloe beamed. Nia didn't smile, but she felt a warmth in her chest. She looked out the window at the gray clouds of London. The applause wasn't for her ego, it was for justice. The landing was smooth, but what awaited them on the ground was anything but. As Flight 808 taxied toward Terminal 5, Nia could see the flashes through the thick glass of the airplane window. It looked like a lightning storm was happening inside the terminal. "Gate arrival in 2 minutes," Captain Miller announced. Nia packed her laptop. She put her sketchbook in her bag. She stood up and adjusted her hoodie. She checked her reflection in the darkened window. She looked tired. Her bun was messy. But she didn't fix it. She wanted them to see her exactly as she was. The seatbelt sign turned off. The chime dinged. Usually there is a mad rush to get bags from the overhead bins. Not today. Everyone stayed seated. They were waiting to see what she would do. Jennifer, the flight attendant, opened the cabin door. The cool English air rushed in. mixed with the damp smell of rain. Nia slung her backpack over one shoulder. She walked to the door. Captain Miller was standing there, his cap tucked under his arm. He looked like he was facing a firing squad. "Ms. Sterling," Miller said, bowing his head slightly. "It was a privilege." Nia stopped. She looked at him. "Captain," she said, "you flew the plane safely. That's your job. But next time, remember, you're the captain. You outrank the flight attendant. Don't let someone else's prejudice steer your ship." Miller swallowed hard. "Understood, ma'am. Never again." Nia nodded and stepped onto the jet bridge. As she emerged from the tunnel and into the arrivals hall, the world exploded into white light. There were hundreds of them. Paparazzi, news anchors, freelance journalists, fans with cell phones. Security guards, hired by Jonathan Pierce, her business partner, were struggling to hold back the line. NIA, Miss Sterling, over here. Is it true you fired her mid-air? How much did you pay? Nia, look this way." The noise was deafening. It was a wall of sound. Nia kept her head down for a moment, the hood shielding her eyes from the blinding flashes. She just wanted to go to the hotel. She wanted a shower. But then, a reporter from the BBC shouted a question that made her stop. "Nia, critics are saying this is just a rich girl throwing a tantrum. They say you bought an airline just to be petty. What do you say to them?" Nia stopped walking. The security guards paused. The crowd went silent, waiting for her reaction. The only sound was the clicking of camera shutters. Nia slowly lowered her hood. She looked directly at the reporter. Her eyes were dark and fierce. "Petty?" Nia repeated, her voice projecting clearly without a microphone. "I was dragged off a plane in handcuffs because of the color of my skin and the clothes on my back. I was told I didn't belong. I was told my money wasn't good enough." She stepped closer to the barrier. "I didn't buy this airline to fire one woman," Nia continued, her voice ringing through the terminal. "I bought it to remind the world that respect has no price tag. You can't put a premium on dignity. And if you try to gatekeep humanity, make sure you can afford the bill when the owner shows up." The crowd erupted. Flashes went off like strobe lights. "And one more thing," Nia added, a small, cold smile playing on her lips. "To the former flight attendant, Sheila, if you're watching this, I hope you kept your receipt for the parking garage. I have a feeling you're going to be there a while." She turned and walked away, flanked by her security team disappearing into the VIP exit. The reporters were frantic, shouting for more, but Nia was gone. She had dropped the mic. But the story wasn't over. While Nia was heading to a 5-star hotel to begin the paperwork for the takeover, the shockwave of her actions was traveling back across the Atlantic. It was hurtling toward New York, straight for a woman named Sheila, who was currently sitting in her car, completely unaware that her life had already been dismantled, brick by brick. The viral storm was over. Now the hard reality of the crash landing was about to begin. While Nia Sterling was stepping into the flashing lights of paparazzi in London, answering questions with the grace of a seasoned CEO, Sheila Evans was facing a much darker, grittier reality back in New York. The contrast could not have been more violent. One woman was ascending to the stars. The other was plummeting toward the concrete. The walk from the terminal to the employee parking lot usually took Sheila exactly 10 minutes. She had walked it thousands of times, usually with her chin high, dragging her roller bag, acknowledging the nods of security guards and junior staff. Today it felt like a death march. She had been stripped of everything. Her badge had been confiscated by airport security. Her company ID was gone. Even her scarf, the signature Horizon Airways silk scarf she had tied perfectly around her neck every morning for 2 decades, had been asked for, as it was company property. She was still wearing the navy blue skirt and blazer, but without the insignia, it just looked like a sad, ill-fitting costume. The humid New York air hit her face, messing up the hair she had sprayed so carefully that morning. She felt naked. Exposed. Every person who walked past her seemed to be staring. Did they know? Had they seen the video? Sheila reached the employee parking exit gate G. This was her sanctuary. For 20 years, she had parked here for free, a perk worth thousands of dollars a year in New York City. She instinctively reached into her purse for her keycard to swipe out. She held the plastic card to the reader. Beep, beep. A red light flashed. The LED screen displayed a message in cold block letters. Access denied. Sheila's heart hammered against her ribs. "Come on," she whispered, her hands shaking. She swiped again, harder this time. Beep, beep. Access denied. No, 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 Sheila panicked. Not yet. They can't do this yet. A line of cars had formed behind her. A taxi driver honked aggressively. "Hey, move it, lady. We got places to be." Sheila, tears blurring her vision, pressed the help button on the intercom. "Security! A board!" Static-filled voice crackled. "My card isn't working," Sheila choked out, trying to maintain some semblance of authority. "I'm a flight attendant with Horizon. System error." "Name?" "Sheila Evans." There was a pause, a long, excruciating silence that stretched for 30 seconds. The honking behind her grew louder. Finally, the voice came back. It wasn't bored anymore. It was cold. "Ms. Evans, the system shows your employment status as terminated cause. Your parking privileges were revoked 17 minutes ago." Sheila felt like she had been punched in the stomach. "But I'm already inside. I just need to leave." "Not my problem, ma'am. Since you are no longer an employee, you are classified as a member of the general public. You've been parked in a premium lot for 4 days. You owe $480. $400! Sheila shrieked. "I don't have $480. I just lost my job." "Then we tow the vehicle, and the impound fee is $600. Pay the machine or step out of the car." Sheila sobbed. It was a guttural, ugly sound. She had to dig through her purse, finding her emergency credit card, the one with the high interest rate she promised Mark she wouldn't use. She jammed it into the machine. Transaction approved. The gate arm lifted slowly, like a mocking salute. Sheila drove through, her tires screeching, leaving behind the only life she had ever known. The drive to Long Island was a blur of paranoia. Every time a car pulled up next to her, she flinched, thinking they were filming her. When she finally turned onto her quiet suburban street, her stomach dropped. It wasn't quiet. 3 news vans were parked on her lawn. One from Channel 4, one from Fox, and a freelance videographer. As soon as her sedan pulled into the driveway, the vultures descended. "Sheila! Sheila! Is it true you called her a hood rat? Sheila, do you have a comment on Nia Sterling buying the airline? How does it feel to be the most hated woman in America right now?" She didn't answer. She threw her car into park, abandoned it in the driveway, and sprinted to her front door, shielding her face with her purse. She fumbled with her keys, terrified they would reach her before she got inside. She slammed the door shut and locked the deadbolt. She leaned against the wood, sliding down to the floor, hyperventilating in the dark hallway. "You're home early." The voice came from the living room. It was Mark, her husband. He was sitting on the couch in the dark, the TV casting a blue glow on his face. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the screen. On the TV, CNN was playing the clip on a loop. "Get your bag, Sheila." "Mark," Sheila whispered. "It's a misunderstanding. I was protecting the cabin." Mark finally looked at her. His eyes were tired. "My boss called me, Sheila. He saw the video. He asked me if I share your values. He asked if this is the kind of language used in our house." "I made a mistake," Sheila cried, standing up and walking toward him. "I thought she was a scammer." "You thought she was a scammer because of how she looked," Mark said, his voice flat. "You've always done this. You judge the waiter. You judge the gardener. You judge the neighbors. I've ignored it for years, telling myself it's just high standards. But this," he pointed at the TV, "this is cruelty. You humiliated us. We are the laughingstock of the neighborhood." "I can fix this," Sheila pleaded. "I'll apologize. I'll get another job." Mark stood up and walked past her toward the bedroom. "You better, because we can't afford the mortgage on one salary." And frankly, I don't want to be seen in public with you right now." The hard karma was not a sprint. It was a marathon. 2 weeks later, the initial media storm had quieted down, but the digital footprint remained eternal. Sheila, desperate to save her marriage and her house, applied for a job at Delta Airlines. She told herself it would be fine. She had 20 years of perfect attendance. She knew every safety protocol by heart. Surely a rival airline would value her expertise. She sat in the interview room, wearing a different suit, smiling her brightest, most fake smile. The recruiter was a young woman named Sarah, who seemed impressed by Sheila's resume on paper. 20 years is impressive, Sheila, Sarah said, tapping her pen. We need experienced leads. Your safety record is impeccable. Safety is my #1 priority, Sheila said, feeling a glimmer of hope. I take command of the cabin very seriously. Great. Well, I just need to run a standard background check and social media screening. It's automated now. Takes about 30 seconds. Sarah typed Sheila Evans into the database. Sheila held her breath. Maybe it won't show up. Maybe it's buried. Sarah's eyes went wide. She stopped chewing her gum. She looked at the screen, then up at Sheila, then back at the screen. Her face hardened instantly. Wait, Sarah said. You're that Sheila? The Horizon Sheila? I can explain. Sheila started, her palms sweating. The video was edited. It was taken out of context. The passenger was being aggressive. Sarah closed the laptop with a snap. The passenger was the new owner of the airline, Ms. Evans. And the video was a live stream. There is no editing in a live stream. Please, Sheila begged, her voice trembling. I really need this job. I'm good at what I do. At Delta, we pride ourselves on inclusivity, Sarah said, standing up and pointing to the door. We don't hire liabilities. And we certainly don't hire people who are trending on Twitter for bigotry. Please leave before I call security. It didn't stop there. Sheila applied to American Airlines. Rejected. JetBlue. Rejected. She applied to manage a hotel front desk. Rejected. She applied to a high-end car rental agency. Rejected. The blacklist was invisible, but it was ironclad. Her name was toxic. No brand wanted to be associated with the Karen of the skies. 6 months later. The glamour of the first-class cabin was a distant memory. The smell of expensive perfume and heated nuts had been replaced by the smell of cardboard dust, diesel fumes, and sweat. Sheila was no longer wearing a tailored uniform. She was wearing an orange safety vest, steel-toed boots that gave her blisters, and a hairnet. She was working the graveyard shift at a massive logistics warehouse in New Jersey. Move it, Evans, the shift supervisor yelled. He was a 20-year-old kid who wouldn't have been allowed in her first-class cabin 6 months ago. Zone 4 needs packing. You're too slow. I'm going, Sheila muttered, her back aching. She spent 8 hours a night standing on concrete, taping boxes, scanning barcodes, and lifting heavy packages. Her manicured nails were gone, replaced by cracked skin and calluses. Her perfectly dyed hair was growing out gray at the roots because she couldn't afford the salon anymore. It was brutal, humbling, back-breaking work. And the irony? She was packing boxes for Amazon, the same company that had bought Nia Sterling software, making her a billionaire. Nia's success was literally trickling down to crush Sheila's back. At 3 a.m., the lunch buzzer rang. Sheila limped into the break room. It was a grim room with flickering fluorescent lights and vending machines that stole your money. She sat at a sticky table, opening a Tupperware container of cold pasta. On the wall, a small television was playing a rerun of CNBC's Business Leaders of the Year. Turn that up, one of her coworkers said. That's her! The girl who bought the airline! Sheila froze. She looked up at the screen. There was Nia Sterling. She looked radiant, powerful, and calm. She was sitting in a hangar, but the background wasn't the old, stuffy Horizon Airways branding. It was sleek, modern, and vibrant. The logo on the plane behind her was a silhouette of a girl in a hoodie looking at the stars. The reporter leaned in. Nia, Under your leadership, Nova Air has become the most profitable airline in the country. You've completely changed the culture. No more curtains between classes? No curtains, Naya said, smiling. We realize that dividing people creates animosity. We want connection. At Nova Air, everyone gets legroom and everyone gets respect. Whether you pay $200 or $2,000, you are a guest in my home. The reporter nodded. I have to ask about the incident that started it all. The flight attendant. Do you know what happened to her? Sheila stopped breathing. She stared at the TV, a piece of cold pasta falling from her fork. Naya looked directly into the camera. For a second, Sheila felt like Naya was looking right through the screen into the dirty break room, straight into her soul. I don't know where she is, Naya said softly. But honestly, I hope she's learning. That flight attendant gave me a gift. She showed me exactly what was broken in the world. She judged me based on my clothes and missed the person underneath. Nia paused, and then delivered the line that would haunt Sheila forever. I don't hate her. I pity her. It must be exhausting to think you're better than everyone else, only to find out you're just baggage. The break room erupted in laughter. Damn! Sheila's supervisor yelled, clapping. She roasted her! Baggage! That's cold! That lady got what she deserved, another coworker said, shaking his head. Imagine kicking a billionaire off a plane. What an idiot! Sheila shrank into her chair. She felt small, microscopic. For 20 years, she had looked down on people, like the ones sitting in this break room. She had thought she was elite. But here she was, wearing the same orange vest, eating the same cold food, realizing the truth. She wasn't special. She was just a person who had been given a little bit of power and had abused it. And now, the universe had balanced the scales. Nia Sterling had turned a moment of humiliation into an empire. Sheila had turned a moment of arrogance into a ruin. As the news segment ended, showing the Nova airplane taking off into a golden sunset, Sheila stood up. Her legs hurt. Her pride hurt. But she had boxes to pack. She walked back to the line, head down, finally understanding the weight of the baggage she had been carrying all along. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the ultimate definition of hard karma. Nia Sterling didn't scream, she didn't throw a tantrum, and she didn't beg for fair treatment. She simply reached into her pocket and bought the table she was told she couldn't sit at. This story is a brutal lesson for everyone. When you look down on people, you are blinding yourself to who they really are. Sheila thought she was kicking off a nobody, a hoodrat who didn't belong. In reality, she was firing her own boss and bankrupting her own future. In life, you should treat the janitor with the exact same respect as the CEO, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because you never know when their roles might switch. The person you judge today could be the person signing your paycheck tomorrow. What do you think? Was Nia's reaction too extreme, or did Sheila get exactly what she deserved? Was the punishment of losing her career fitting for the crime of discrimination? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and I'm curious whose side you are on. If you enjoyed this story of massive revenge and justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow and tells YouTube you want more stories like this. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. We drop new drama every Tuesday and Friday. Be kind, remain humble, and never ever judge a hoodie. Thanks for watching.